So Space Marine 2 came out it's been out for a couple weeks. It's a lot of fun. It's a very fun game. Campaign, a lot of fun. Great to play with friends.
You're walking in place pointing at me. Now you're standing still. Now you're in front of me. You're running. Also, it looks like we're being charged very slowly. I was gonna say, off goes Luke. I may as well.
I'm gonna fix it.
Do you hear that?
Oh yeah, this part.
Oh, that's sick. Dude!
Where are the traitors? They are everywhere. Honored brother, join us, and you may sate your rage and aid our cause. Lead me to the slaughter.
Oh yeah. This way, big guy. Where's he going?
To do something.
Yeah.
This part's sick. Aaron, watch the jump out.
Oh my god.
Customizing your Marine is awesome. You can just look cool. It's really easy to look cool in this game. The PvP is what I want to talk about though. PvP for Space Marine 2, a lot of fun, very good. But it has some really weird balancing to it. Some of the weapons, some of the classes. I just wanted to put it down in writing somewhere, so to speak. The grenades are very odd. The frag grenades, the default frag grenades that everybody gets, very strong, very lethal for sure. The shock grenades are just like, why wouldn't you be using the shock grenades? Because they're so good. They double as a flashbang. Another thing about shock grenades that I don't think a lot of people know is that they don't deal self damage like frag grenades in PvP deal self damage. If you throw them at your feet, you're gonna die. Shock grenades do not. At least they don't like it shock you over time. Crack grenades are kind of okay. I initially thought they were garbage, but they definitely are the most skill heavy grenade, which compared to the frag grenade or the shock grenade, it still might make them the worst since those require a lot less skill to use. But the crack grenades, if you use them in an ambush with the sniper, they're pretty good. They're actually really good versus a bulwark, I've noticed. However, they really don't deal that much damage, at least compared to the frag grenades. Another thing that I think is a little strange, and I've seen some discourse about this online, is that the melee weapons and the sidearm choices for some of the classes are a little arbitrarily restricted and feels a little strange. Most classes only have the regular bolt pistol as a sidearm. And then classes like the sniper only have the combat knife instead of being able to use a combat knife or the chainsword. Which, I mean, they're totally fine melee weapons, but it would be more fun if you can mix and match. Like maybe I think some of these classes should have access to the default bolt pistol, but also the plasma pistol maybe. And more classes should have access to both the knife and the chainsword. Literally, purely for some variation, because these weapons are fun to use, and it sucks to only be restricted to a singular sidearm melee weapon for some of these classes. Speaking of some of these classes, though, the craziest balancing in the PvP is definitely about some of these classes. The Bulwark especially. The Bulwark, I think anybody who has played any of the PvP at this point knows that the Bulwark is absolutely insane. The Bulwark has his shield that he can block any and all damage from the front, and he's one of the tankier classes too. But he's very strong. That shield is, I mean, that's kind of the reason to play him. So obviously the shield is going to be strong. He has 4 armor segments too. So he's one of the tankier classes, but the shield is insane. Like I said, the shield blocks everything from the front with 0 chip damage. There's 0 kind of like, there's no blocking stamina. So the bulwark can just sit like in a doorway with his shield up, and you cannot deal damage to him. There's a few ways to break his guard. If you heavy attack him, it works. You can break his guard. If you land a grenade just right, it can break his guard. If not, just straight up kill him. If it rolls past him and he doesn't position correctly, a grenade can just kill him. But I've also seen grenades break their guard, but I'm not really sure how you do it with them. But yeah, bulwark, some might say too strong. I think it would be nice if bulwark maybe took some chip damage or had some kind of blocking stamina bar. I don't think it needs both. Because I mean, it is counterable. You can beat bulwarks if you just run up to them and heavy attack them, and you're not like in a crowd of enemies. It does work, but it's not the most engaging thing to fight against. The other class that I noticed has a little bit of jank to him is the Vanguard. The 2 armor segment grappling hook class. Vanguard, I think the Vanguard is a lot of fun. He's very quick, very maneuverable. Once you get more comfortable with using a grapple hook to navigate around the map and not exclusively saving them for grappling to enemies, he really opens up to how quickly you can rotate around in like death matches for a flank or go from point to point. It is crazy. The Vanguard is also a really good counter to the Bulwark because the shield does one of the few things that the Bulwark shield does not block is the Vanguard grappling hook. And so you can grapple into him, you kick him, and then for Bulwark, so I would probably start meleeing. I wouldn't start lighting him up with your gun, but you can go either or. There's also pretty good versus heavies because the Vanguard grappling hook actually disables the Iron Halo from the heavy. So that's good if you're. Vanguard, I've noticed cannot. I don't think a Vanguard can beat a heavy in a 1v1 if they're both at full health and armor. So you do kind of need to not take on heavies unless you have teammates backing you up. However, if you have a team behind you and their Iron Halo's up, you can really easily take it down without having to waste all the ammo into damaging it. About the Vanguard's grappling hook, it's a little janky. There are some scenarios where the grappling hook can break, like if the line of sight gets like if the person is walking around a corner and you grapple hook them, and so it attaches to them, but they're still moving and they slide forward a little bit as they're stopping or whatever, it'll break the grapple. The grapple hook is also, it's really unreliable at close range. I think part of the reason this is that I've noticed the grapple literally shoots out of your left hand. Like it doesn't come out of the center of your character or anything. It actually comes out of the gun that's in your left hand, so the crosshair isn't exact, and when you get too close, you can really feel that. While grappling, or once you've initiated grapple and you start pulling, I think it's once you start reeling in, I've noticed that you actually become kind of immune to any sort of CC. Stun grenades, if an enemy Vanguard tries to grapple you, but you've begun grappling yourself, then their grapple hook will just miss you straight up. It'll just straight up miss you and hit like the wall behind you. Another strange thing about the Vanguard is unless your target is a bulwark, unless you've grappled onto a bulwark, it's usually better to just shoot them after you grapple them in. Obviously, with a bulwark, you can just block your shots, which is why you melee him. But anything else, you're gonna kill them much more quickly and much more reliably just by shooting them. Just shoot them. There are a couple other classes that I have opinions on. I think it's weird that the infiltrator or the sniper class doesn't decloak whenever it takes a certain amount of damage, which isn't that big of a problem, but with how strong stun grenades are and how strong their blind is, it becomes really obnoxious. It's hard to punish an infiltrator for like cloaking right in front of you, because they can just cloak and then blind you and then get away still, even if you light them up. The tactical, which is my favorite class, by the way. The tactical, I'm not sure how much extra damage the Auspex scan makes enemies take. I haven't seen any numbers in game, and sometimes it doesn't feel very significant. Sometimes it feels like the only thing you're doing is painting them through walls, which is still, I mean, very strong. But, you know, the wall hacks is incredible. But I would be curious to see how much extra damage it actually makes them take. The last big thing about the Space Marine PvP is the melee. Melee. Melee is the big thing that I've seen people getting frustrated about, other than the bulwark. And it's because it's not very good. Melee in PvP deals damage directly to health, so it avoids the armor and deals damage directly to health, which is fine. I think that makes sense. But just in general, melee kind of just feels like it's copy and pasted from the campaign, and they didn't really test it to make sure it works in PvP. That's kind of what it feels like. Melee doesn't have any kind of hit stun effect, so if someone comes up to you and melees you, they can just keep shooting you, and depending on what weapon they have, they might actually beat you because of how slow the melee combos are. Except for the bulwark can shield bash, and that has a stun, but that's because that's a shield bash. That's not like it's any kind of light melee attack or anything. It's because it's the bulwark shield bash. Melee in PvP is also kind of just button mashing to see who can finish their combo quicker. Kind of because parrying doesn't really do much in multiplayer. It blocks the damage, but it doesn't have any stagger. It doesn't stagger the attacker. It doesn't stun them. It kind of just locks you in place. And assuming the melee or the attacker keeps meleeing you, then you can keep parrying, or you guys can both start shooting each other and see who wins that 50-50. But yeah, parrying's kind of just if you're getting jumped by an assault or a vanguard and they start meleeing you and you have teammates nearby that you can parry them and hope that your teammates shoot them in the back. And if not, then you're kind of stuck there until one of you breaks the melee parry standoff, or until the enemies come by and shoot you while they're meleeing you. Another thing is that the melee weapon ranges, I think, this is kind of just my opinion, but they feel kind of, they're a little strange. I think the chainsword is fine. I think the thunderhammer has like very long range, deceptively long range, especially on the assault's jetpack slam, and especially on the charged heavy attack where they spin it around and then slam it in the ground and it's this big explosion. Very long range, incredible long range. And unfortunately, the combat knife is like using a toothpick. I mean, it's even with like the sprinting attack that kind of propels you forward and thrusts the knife forward, it's very short range. I wish it was longer. I know it's a knife. It's a knife and not a chainsword. But I do wish it had a little bit of longer range, because I think the knife looks really cool and it's a lot of fun to use because of how quick it is, and considering that its damage is a lot lower. I do think that it needs a little bit of help. I know it's supposed to have the largest parry window of the weapons, but I think its range is still way too low. Another thing about melee that makes it really just kind of annoying is that there's no sort of indicator for heavy versus light attacks. So whereas in the campaign there's the big orange flash for unparryable attacks. There's nothing like that in multiplayer, so it mainly only matters versus like the thunder hammer, or I guess the power glove can one shot you with a heavy attack now, but you know, just some closing thoughts that I didn't really know where else to throw these in. I really wish you could pick between Chaos or Imperium. It feels really bad to spend all these credits to unlock the paint colors and armor pieces and grind out cosmetics for your Adeptus Astartes and then load into a game and you're on Chaos. And I know they put out a statement regarding Chaos customization and that they have some arbitrary limits placed upon them, most likely by Games Workshop. But it still feels bad. I don't know. I wouldn't feel as bad about it if there was more customization for the Chaos Marines other than just changing their color. Um, but it feels bad. Also, at least in my opinion, the grenade indicator, the threat indicator, if there's a grenade on the ground close to you, is really hard to interpret. Sometimes it'll be on your screen and you just take a little sliver of damage, it shears your armor off, and sometimes it's on your screen and you die to it because you're too close to it. Um, so maybe that's just a personal thing, maybe that's just a skill issue and I need to pay more attention, which is entirely possible. But for me, it's a little hard to interpret. Also, sensory input. The enemies, it's easier to hear the enemies through walls while they're stepping around than it is when they're right in front of you. It's most problematic for the assault, who has this giant jetpack that propels this 7 feet tall, however many pounds weighing space marine into the air and slams it down, and it sounds like a paper airplane. It literally makes no noise. Which is a little. I think they need to turn up the volume on that. I think they need to turn the volume on enemies in general, but it's most egregious for the assault, who has their big jetpack that they slam down in the sky from. I do hope eventually they add some new weapons to Space Marine. I would really like to see those. I don't know what they're called, like the gun gauntlets. Calgar has them in the campaign. Um, they're like the war machine, for lack of a better description, the war machine gun gauntlets. Um, Also, I know it's kind of what makes the heavy special, but I think it would be really cool if the tactical marine could use some of the heavy weapons, and like obviously in exchange for a melee weapon. But yeah, I don't know. I want to be a tactical and carry a heavy plasma incinerator. But that's it. That's my thoughts on Space Marine 2, the PvP. It's very fun. It feels really good to do good, and it's fun to play as your own custom Space Marine. It just has these weird little pieces of it that don't quite fit right, and I'm really excited for them to start, patching it and adding things and fixing things and balancing things. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I can see myself playing this for quite a while. It's been a while since I've had a good PvP shooter to play, and I think this is filling that role quite nicely.